Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome an Army officer turned entrepreneur, innovator, and author from India, Col Sunil Prem. Sunil, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Ashutosh. It's indeed a pleasure to be talking to you here.
Thank you.
And I have read a lot about your show, seen your books. So indeed, it's my privilege.
Thank you so much. Col Sunil Prem is the founder of Brisk Olive Business Solutions Private Limited. As I mentioned, he's an ex-Army officer. He was the best Army cadet at the National Defense Academy and the President's Gold Medal winner at the Indian Military Academy. And he's also an author. So, Sunil, let's talk about Brisk Olive Solutions. Tell me a little bit about this and your motivation to start.
Okay, so you know what Brisk Olive is actually, it's very difficult to find another company which does something similar, because what we are doing is we have India's largest field force of ex-soldiers. And I know that when we spoke, we used to say 25,000. Today, it is 100,000.
Wow.
And what we do is we help companies realize their dreams through us. So let me just explain that.
Yeah.
You know, any company, whether it is small or large, would like to grow across India, right? Which means, let's say a company is setting up its offices across India. It needs people to research those areas, carry out surveys, thereafter do projects or project management, deliver its products or services, carry out trainings, verifications, rectifications, audit its existing facilities, and so on and so forth. Now, can you off your head think of another company which can do this thing, but simultaneously at thousands of places, right? And through India's most reliable and most operationally trained field force, which is our ex-soldiers.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Right? You know, because the ex-soldiers, they are in internal security operations or doing, external security, which is fighting our enemies, or we are training. And that's what we do.
Correct.
You know, we sometimes your ears, you get sick of hearing that thing. The more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. But that's a reality. The Indian soldier is probably one of the most highly trained guys.
Correct.
And this training is not just about war fighting or firing a weapon or something like that. Right? You getting trained in the specialities of your branch. For example, I was in the Corps of Engineers. So apart from building bridges and blowing them up or laying mines or water supply, we were doing 100 technical things because, for example, I have sort of designed air conditioning or chilled water plants for a base repair depot, which is like a massive, massive organization, which is, servicing helicopters and what have you for the Air Force. Now, so in the Army, you would have drivers to divers. That's what we say.
Correct.
You have electrical guys, communications guys. You have, the mechanical engineering guys, logistics people, supplies people. Right? And they're pretty good at what they do.
Absolutely.
And today, what we are doing is we are carrying out, so let me give you an example. There is this project which we did during COVID. And this was a data logging, environmental data logging at 1,905 locations. And this was covering 8 million square kilometers across the country. And the project was so large that the client, I won't throw the name here, they were not really confident that anybody would be able to cover entire India. So they gave us probably, half or 2/3 of India, which is, the size I told you. And despite COVID, we were able to deliver this service. Right?
Amazing.
As to the motivation, well, I'll have to tell you a little story.
Please.
2009, I was retired. I'd come out, was doing a job, and on a holiday in Chandigarh with my wife and kids. And there, whilst visiting fun cinemas, I still remember in front of State Bank of India, I saw a junior commissioned officer of my regiment standing as a guard with a stick.
Wow.
Now, that was devastating for me. You know why? being a guard is fantastic. It's a good job. But a guy who had commanded 200 people and who done all these things which I spoke about, built bridges, destroyed them, laid minefields, done project management, managed a team of 200 people for doing, hundreds of things. And here, once he comes out from the proudest organization, the most highly trained fellow, he's considered fit only to stand as a guard in front of a, bank. So isn't this a loss to him? And isn't this an even bigger loss to the country?
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. Because you got this force, 65,000 people retiring every year.
Correct.
2.4 million ex-soldiers and 2.4 million wives. You will take a little bit here, right? And their capabilities, if we were able to harness them, would we be in some way transforming the country or not?
Absolutely right.
Whilst also ensuring amazing second lives to these guys. So frankly, that was my motivation.
Fascinating.
And, yeah.
So, Sunil, as a person who spent many years in the army, what were some of your learnings from the army that you brought into business?
Okay. Top of my head, the first one I'd like to talk about, and which, I don't even have to think about it, is in the army, we used to have this phrase that no plan survives contact, right? So you plan for a battle or a campaign, and the moment the enemy hits you, your plan goes for a 6. But that said, I think one of the most important things in life is to plan, because it gives you a datum, right? And because the same thing is happening to you as well as to the enemy.
Correct.
Right? And if you are planned, at least you have a certain datum set. You can take advantage of those things, and then you can flex on top of that.
Right.
Now, let me give you an example of this in business, which hit us right off when we started Brisk. So we started Brisk, very happily, just pre-COVID. Of course, we didn't know it was coming.
Yeah.
And December 2019 is when we started off. And, in February, we're sitting very happy, 2 months into the business and an order book of, roughly 2 crores, right? And whoop, COVID hits you.
Yeah.
So where are all our plans? But, what we had, I had sort of, thought through a lot of possibilities. This was not one of them. But this project, which I told you about, these 1,900 odd locations, we were able to conduct that through COVID, through all the hotspots where, no communication was possible. This had a lot of up and down, because you needed the postal service to deliver those data logging, devices. They weren't functioning. The post offices were shut down. But without going into the details, and, in fact, some of these surveyors, I'm sad to say, we even lost surveyors. Some passed away during COVID.
Right.
But despite everything, we were able to deliver that project. And last month, after 2 years, we finished it.
Fantastic.
So that is my primary learning. The second learning, if you were to ask me, I would say, there is this thing about, somebody has said that very famous thing that, compounding is the most powerful thing in this world. Well, I'm sure you'll agree. More than compounding is collaboration.
Yeah.
People. So you can invest and grow your money.
Correct.
But if you invest in people, if you have a field force like 100,000 people, there is no limit to what you can do.
Correct.
Because people come with a built-in natural intelligence. And when you put a lot of people together, so that's been my learning.
Wonderful.
Because even in business, I have always gone in for the people. But I won't say I'm really bothered about the technical capabilities. Those can always be learned. Skills can be learned. Experience can be given. The importance is that attitude, and I very strongly believe in that. So like in the armed forces, we call it that do or die attitude. And that's what you do in the armed forces. Either you do or you die trying, right?
Correct.
So now you don't expect employees to die, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So if you have that kind of a thing, so I won't really just credit our planning to taking us through COVID and, us doing well.
Yeah.
I think it's the team, whether it is on board within the company or whether it is our extended team on the ground, which is doing all these projects.
Fascinating. So one of the other things that people talk about a lot, and I've often said that leaders like you have probably managed the largest number of cultures in the army.
Yes.
The moment you come out, the whole aspect of culture strikes a Fauji, because we are a very, very different kind of people when we are outside as civilians.
Yeah.
My question to you is, how are you managing cultures across a team of 100,000 people that you just spoke about?
So, I would be lying if I said that it was very difficult, very frankly. Because you see, the problem here is, or shall I say, this is the core of our strength.
Correct.
When we're talking about 100,000 field force, these are not nameless, faceless people. We practically know the 15 to 20 to 30-year history, the past performance, what that guy did, how good he was, where lie his weaknesses. We know that pretty well. And as you said, the biggest problem is culture, right? How do you build it? How do you sustain it?
Correct.
But for us, that problem has already been solved by the armed forces. So, when I sort of thought of this business model, because at the end of it, it has to be a business, it has to sustain itself, it has to give value to the clients, and it has to give value to our ex-soldiers. Right. So the thing was, which, was my basic sort of premise, which I wanted to test out, that you can standardize a soap, a fridge, and even an aircraft. Take the most, or probably even what Elon Musk does.
Correct.
How do you standardize the service? Beyond a point, you can standardize delivery of goods. You can put a tracker, you can put a, geofence that area, you can put timings. Very simple. How do you standardize how a guy does projects beautifully, unsupervised? So even today, I think a lot depends upon the guy who's doing it. His character, his honesty, integrity, his, quality, which he puts in. You can talk about quality here in the boardroom, but he's got to do it on the ground. And I think we are blessed because for us, that is already sorted out. But since you asked the question, let me, talk about what I do in the company, which is both soldiers and ex-soldiers.
Correct.
So here too, culture is not something which we talk about. We live, right? And I would like to, recently I, had occasion to be talking to Mr. Agarwal of Agarwal Packers and Movers.
Right.
Without going into details, I hats off to that gentleman. He's an ex-Fauji again, of course, that Air Force guy. That, if you have a boss who's living that culture, how can you have somebody else not doing it? So, I'm fallible like everybody else, but that's always something which I'm telling to myself. That, look, buddy, these are not values written on a piece of paper. And that's what we are telling our people also. In fact, we have a daily prayer every morning.
Okay.
Every morning when we start, we have a kind of an affirmation. And this is what we talk about.
Wonderful.
And I'm very clear about this. It's not that we are, absolutely ruthless or something. But if we find a cultural for example, one of our values is we say we will never lie. Because my personal belief in life is the day you start lying to yourself, you don't even know who you are. So what are you talking about succeeding or whatever in life? So we say no lies. Whatever the loss, whatever the short-term, whatever, my personal belief is that if you have a value, then you even have to be ready to pay for it sometimes. It's not that it doesn't come without a loss. So that's how we play culture in our company.
Amazing.
And I think it's working.
Fantastic. So my next question is, in such a large number of people, 100,000 people, to manage them is a challenge. What are some of your learnings and challenges when you manage such a large number of people?
So, when you are managing people across the country, with and especially when you're doing project management. So one of the core things is the processes. You need to get your processes very, very right.
Correct.
It's the systems which drive the people. So from day one, we had put in place kind of an ERP, which has grown and become sprawling. Now we are replacing it with a mobile app as we speak. That is already happening. And, because managing 10 or 20 people, you can do it through, recall here.
Right.
Managing a few projects you can do, but if you're doing so many projects at various places, you need systems.
Correct.
To support the good people. So one of my philosophies in life has always been that if you drive a nail upside down, it's howsoever hard you keep trying, it's not going to go in the wood.
Correct. Well said.
But it's not just about the intent or the enthusiasm, like they say, Josh. It's also about the method. Right? You need to stumble, do whatever it is, find the best people, learn from them, put the right methods and systemize them so that you can scale them.
Wonderful.
Which today we have a lot of technology to help us in that.
Fantastic. So one more question relating to Brisk, Olive, and then I'll move to your book. You mentioned, when I was reading about you, you mentioned that you help security forces defeat terrorists and their bombs. Please explain this to me with an example or an anecdote.
Okay. So what we say is today in couple of my other companies, which is Navyug and Anima Ventures, practically every security force in India is our client, whether it is the NSG, the Special Forces, the Army, Navy, CRPF, Police, and a lot of others. For example, both the training ranges of the NSG have been done by us. The Institute of ID Management, we were part of the raising of that institute.
Okay.
And I still, remember working with the first commandant and, going through all the problems and raising that. So what we do there is, we realized that India has been fighting insurgencies and terrorism since 1920, 27, 29, right? Since the British days. Right. And here we were in the year 2009-10, when I started my companies, importing everything from overseas, right? There were 16, 18 odd companies which would have India offices and they would sell stuff here, right? So we said, why can't we do it here? Why do we need to come from outside? Because, indigenization actually is a real requirement. So when we pick up something from outside, let me give you an example about remotely operated vehicles for removing bombs or diffusing bombs. So before giving the entire canvas of what counter ID is, so if you get an ROV from outside, firstly, it doesn't know how. They are built for highly sophisticated IDs, right? Improvised explosive devices, bombs. In our country, what do the Naxals do? They just pick up a barrel, fill it up with 200 kilos of explosives and bury it into the ground. Correct. And any ROV which you import does not have a digger attachment, right? So basically, now coming to what we do. Terrorists today, get after whether soft targets or the security forces in two manners. One is called active shootings, which is, when they'll fire at this thing. And the second one is bombs. Because a bomb you can put and get away and, set it off remotely. So how we defeat terrorists and their bombs is first after going after the entire gamut of terrorism. I won't go into details of that, but just talking about bombs. So we, I have these pics here. So, for example, we build these, I don't know whether you can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Operated vehicles. Now, this ROV is built for India. It's very compact. It can go in the dicky of my car and definitely in a gypsy, which the police forces have. And then it can do all those things, which those gargantuan things, which you import, but unfortunately, you can't take them to the site. So we are doing, then coming to, for example, we're making these tactical engagement trainers. Now, what is this? A tactical engagement trainer is like, let's call it a police bad guys, like one of those sitcoms which you watch on Netflix.
Right.
When they are, doing what they do. And this trainer allows you to train all of that, right? Using a live simulator, which has a whole lot of technology behind it. Because this is how you'll see that exercise live on the ground, recording stuff, putting intelligence, things like man-to-man distance or this person, this should not be doing this. All of this intelligence and lessons are being drawn out.
Wonderful.
So these are some of the products.
Fantastic.
We make the entire range of counter IED, that is improvised explosive devices, for the armed forces or the security forces. And to put it into perspective, in the Iraq war, what caused the maximum casualties? 85% of the casualties were by bombs and IEDs. So if you defeat those, well, you sort of defeated terrorism.
Fantastic. So Sunil, now I've got the limited time left. And I want to move to your books. You're an author of several books, I think, and I'd like to know about your books. Tell me about what made you write. What were your hypotheses?
So it's most humbling to be talking about books to such a prolific, writer as yourself. But well, there's this book which I have written, which is called Soldier 2.0. 19 steps to a soldier's dream second life.
Okay.
I tried to reduce it to 9, but I just couldn't. So this is that book. Yeah.
Okay.
And this, I would say, is less of an effort in writing.
Yeah.
More of a passion. Because, this sort of tells a soldier that you come into the, the civil world with so many qualities. I have a, cartoon somewhere here with so much with you. So if you see this, all these things have been drawn by my daughter.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
But this is what you're left looking like. You don't understand this world.
Yeah.
So the aim of writing this book was to give a sort of a, if you permit, a Bible to people who could go through it. And of course, they would face difficulties, they would fall, but at least they would have a plan. So in a way, I call this a military to civilian transition plan for a soldier and the spouse.
Fantastic.
Now, the second thing which I'm doing is, so I wrote this book, frankly, because writing the English one for officers was the easier part. Because officers are much lesser, about 100,000 strong. The men are another million, and they have very peculiar problems. So currently, I'm translating this book, of course, rewriting and translating. Translation is done by a wonderful lady called Ms. Swati Chaturvedi, very good in Hindi. And this book would be for soldiers in two versions, one in Hindi, and the second one would be in Roman Hindi.
Okay.
Again, very peculiar thing, because we have soldiers from Madras, from Assam, from Nagaland. Many of them won't read Hindi, but they read Roman Hindi, which is Hindi written in the English alphabet.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. And that's what's used in the armed forces. So the third one is there.
Very interesting.
Now, the other book, which is under publication with Rupa, is called The Power of Conscious Human Patterns.
Okay.
So I have the cover, I think. Yeah. And that's basically this. You can see this.
Yeah.
It's this premise is that, if you have a goal in life, right, and if you can leverage your human patterns. Patterns are a little more than, I would say, a lot more than just habits. It's the kind of routines or subroutines which you follow in life, small and large. If you can master those, well, you can sort of be one of those guys whom, people say that, who's the guy who's will be able to do this, and you raise your hand and say, I, with utter confidence. So that's my
wonderful. So on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about the incredible work you are doing to really rehabilitate hundreds of thousands of soldiers, different ranks across the country. Thank you for talking to me about all the work you're doing with your other company, with IEDs, and to be able to save lives of so many of our soldiers. And finally, thank you for talking to me about your books. Good luck with all your books, and thank you for speaking to me.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. It's been my privilege. When you said that you'd like to take this interview, I can't tell you. I mean, I might have not sort of held my enthusiasm back, but it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you with somebody so accomplished as yourself. So
thank you.
I should be thanking you.
Thank you for listening to the brand called You Videocast and Podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called you.